Welcome to another episode of The Mind's Eye with Mike Larry. As you guys already know, this is your host, Mike Larry. This here is part 3 of the mini-series about relationship and dating. As you guys remember in part 2, we'll had some interesting questions for the ladies. Let's see if they answered them.
Number one is having sex before marriage a deal breaker? That's what I want to know. So if you're dating someone and you are saying I'm not having sex before marriage, and the dude is like, is it done, or is it like maybe we can make this work, or is that incompatibility too far apart to make it work? Like, is that?
So I feel like the women are thinking. Go ahead, Melinda. I'm sorry. You were gonna say something?
I said I'm going to throw in the towel because I understand men and how they operate, and if they say that they want something and they know that they want something, they're not going to wait. And I'm also not going to bend on how I feel. So there's just going to be too many issues going down the line, and then we're going to get a year into the relationship, and then he's going to be like, "I'm tired of waiting." And I'm like, "That's unfortunate." And then the relationship.
That's unfortunate. What if I'm tired of waiting means can I put a ring on it?
I mean, let's do that. Sure.
all right.
Well, that's why you see
it be going down. This relationship going to be intentional anyway. So
right, exactly.
Okay.
A year in, and this may be a whole nother rabbit trail, but a year in, if you don't know, then that's no. And so I'm gonna go ahead and take a step back so you can have all
that's
the room.
Interesting to know. You said a year in, you should know. Okay.
You should. Some people think you should know in 6 months. I mean, honestly.
And I can say this, like, I'll be 36 next week, and I'm not 21 anymore.
Okay.
Really, what you see here is what it is.
That's what it is. Yeah.
It takes you a year to figure that out. Then that means most likely that you have some things that you need to figure out within yourself. So it's not anything; it's a you thing. So I'm gonna step back and let you figure out you in the most purest of ways, and that would be without me in the way. And so I agree with Melinda. Like, it's gonna be and it's hard, okay, because you like that person so much, and they like you, and you guys are vibing, and so you think that if that guy is like, I don't know, you think that like he may change his mind, but there's a timestamp on that.
Can I ask a 1B to that question? Do women really want a man who doesn't want to have sex with them anyway?
Okay, see, that's where I was going to go.
I figured that's where you were thinking.
That's strong. That's man. You hit it on the head.
Because that's the man side of it. So I wanted to.
You hit it on the head.
That's different, right? Can I answer 1A and 1B? So getting back to 1A, right? To where Nakia was going, been around the block, already my branch already broke or waved in that direction and already did that, right? So now in this second coming of life, I would call it, right, and being a born again celibate person, right, it's a deal breaker, right? It's complete deal breaker because it has been so intentional to do what I'm doing, right, and not fall trap to any of that. So it means a lot more than I think when I was younger and falling to the culture of things and saying, right, this is what the culture is saying that I must do. We got to try before we buy and all that type of stuff, right? And so here I am now, this little old lady trending to be a little old lady. No, I'm not. But, trending towards, so the gentleman that I necessarily would be dating, unless, I'd be a cougar, but right, they've been there, done that as well. So the expectation is a little bit different from my perspective. You've already had fun, right? You've already done what you've done. So if you've truly given your life back, and we're trending in the same space of being committed to what God has said that we should have done originally, then we both should be in that space. Now, to get to the attraction of it all, right? Yes, you do want a man that finds you attractive. Like, right, then what is the purpose, right? Like, you should want to have sex with me if we are going to be together and we're operating in this trend or this path, right? This journey. It should not be that you don't like, you just don't see me. I am still a sexual being, right? And I still, just because I'm not actively engaging in sex does not mean that I'm not a sexual being. And so, yes, you need to be attracted to me and want to have sex with me. But the other piece of that, which was maybe 1.5, was if you put a ring on it. No, just don't put a ring on it so you can get with me, so we can do the thing. We can do
That's
the
the mistake a lot of people make.
because that's what and there are, I feel like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say from our church, but since coming down here, I've noticed it more often that it's like, oh, because people say, oh, you should know in 6 months, right? Then they think that is when it gets to month 4.5. Well, I kind of know that that's the person. I feel like that's the person, but you still didn't do all the work. And you probably were a couple that should have waited a year, but now you want to put a ring on it and you get married in month 7 and you haven't done all the work to be 100% compatible. And now you're separated or you're about to get a divorce or all the things. The ring is not the entryway into the sexual portal, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
I want to talk about that from a man's perspective.
Break it down, Mike Lowry.
To me, I'm a spiritual person, right? And, I go to church, I go to Elevation. That's how I met all of you, right? So, and my dad's a pastor, at a church, kind of back home. And just thinking about like the whole concept of that is something that I struggle with and always have struggled with. Like the idea of not having sex until I get married. It's like one of the things where it's like when your flesh is weak, that's the one thing my flesh is extremely weak on. But with that being said, it doesn't make me a bad guy. It doesn't make me like, any less of like being compatible, having the chemistry that's necessary, making money, providing, or, showing you the way to God, like, praying for you and doing all those things. But I feel like in all things, every man or woman has weaknesses. But I do think that like in our weaknesses, some weaknesses are kind of a little more elevated than others, like depending on how your walk in spirituality is. Like, for example, like there's people that do crazy stuff and be like, oh man, sex before marriage is forbidden. Or they'll say stuff like, well, we can't, get along with people from the LGBT, Q community, but they have sex before marriage. So it's just like, hold up, like, God forgives all, right? Like, and it's not our place to judge. So how can we judge these people for choosing the lifestyle that they want? Our job is to love them for who they are. And I think like, even like for people that may like partake in sex before marriage, doesn't make them bad people. It's just something that they struggle with as a weakness. And it could be men, it could be women, but I do appreciate women that that want to be celibate before marriage. It's a huge like character like thing. It's amazing. And I actually dated a woman once that kind of played double dutch with it. Like she, like 1 minute she wanted to be celibate. Okay, that's what you want to do. All right, I'm cool. Next minute she didn't want to be, and it was just kind of like a back and forth thing. I was like, look, this isn't like working. Like, are we gonna do this or we're not? Like, if we're not, I like you enough to not. But if we are, I like you enough to do. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's my piece. That's keeping it real. But I don't feel like, as spiritual as this is, don't pass up a good man because he might be that attracted to you and you can lose him for that moment. Y'all got to have that conversation early, like straight up in the beginning, top dollar. Because like if he's like not even pressing you, y'all kind of like giving the vibe, you haven't put yourself in situations to do it. He kind of can kind of catch a hint. And then a year or 6 months from now, he kind of like pushing up on you. Then you're like, oh no, I'm celibate. That's gonna be a whole lot worse than just, putting it out there up front, like on the third date, like for real. Because after the first and second date, you just kind of get a feel for the person before you be, doing all that anyway.
This is
Well, yeah,
good.
that's my-
This is good.
Yeah,
So
I
people in the
definitely.
first conversation, I don't know if I scared some people away. I'm like, so basically, hi, my name's Cynthia. We're not gonna have sex.
Must be covered in the blood.
Are you covered in the blood or no?
Covered in the blood. And your sex.
Kinda.
He
I
said
put that on one of my
kinda.
dating
Halfway.
profiles. Like I put in my dating profile, don't message me unless you're covered in the blood.
Oh my
Oh
god.
I ain't
snap!
getting no
Oh
messages.
snap!
No messages did she get.
Oh my god.
Oh man! Oh man! That's good.
But
That's
I
good.
like your comment about the judgment of it all, right? And I think people make decisions and the decisions don't define their character, right? And so
Right.
having been one of those people who made a decision to have sex and have a child and all the things, right? My church offered a lot of church hurt as a result of that because there was an expectation. So I try to walk from that. The lesson of that was that I don't judge. However, what I know about being celibate in this time, what I've learned in this time is that this is a very sacred gift that I'm giving to someone. Right. And
Absolutely.
there's a lot of like people, I feel like we don't realize and we don't give enough credence to a soul tie. Right. And sometimes it's hard to shake that. Right. I'm still severing one. Right. And so with that being said, it is not a reflection on the gentleman that would want to have sex with me and all the things. It is we're back to Will's, getting to know who I am and getting to know what is important and valuable within me. And that's one of the things that I absolutely value because it is a treasure. So that all being said, right, if you want part of the treasure box, we got to make sure we align up in the second, as Nakia said, second date. I was waiting, a couple more dates, but I'm going to take Nakia's advice. Second date, do you believe in Jesus? Are you covered in the blood? And on top of that, right, just know that I am celibate and all of the things, right? And so if done appropriately, the right man will surface. God is not going to send me someone who, right, is necessary. If that's what he wants, he's going to find the right woman that also is willing to do that as well as where I sit, right? So they're willing to, it's not for me to judge, right? If you're willing to do that in advance of being married, then that's for you, but that's not for me. And so I hope you bid you adieu, have a good time, right? And no judgment. You still might have been a nice person and all the things, right? And you probably, who knows, the two of y'all might go further in your walk with Jesus than I could ever go, right? Just because you found your mate and you found your match, and that's the path and the journey that God had for you. But I know that he's telling me that this is a treasure. You need to wait. You need to hold on to it this go round, right? I'm giving you've taken another opportunity to, right, make this valuable, and you don't want to have another soul tie with someone that you're not compatible with. So it's not I would say, if more people can get to this place where they're not judging, right, and not being judgy, because we are not the final say, right, and that's how I feel about LGBT as community as well. Just add that in because you brought it up. But it's not for me to judge. I need to. It's not for me to judge what you want to do, but I know what is right for me, and I know that God wants me to walk in love. I'll love you from afar, but we don't have to have sex. And if that's what you want to do, then that's up to you to find someone who will be willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like
That's
the
good.
Bible says, love thy neighbor. It didn't say based on circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like we can't be that way. Like everybody has different walks, different situations. We all got to this little meeting here different ways. You know what I mean? Like we all had different lives up to this. That's just how it goes and what it is. You know what I mean? So I just feel like everybody has their own walk, their own situation, and you get there how you get there. But I hope that one day we all have amazing, successful relationships, and not just in partnership with another, like mate-wise, but like just in business and friendships, just all of the above, like, church, like just, part of the reason I go to church, I get the word, but I can listen to sermons on YouTube. It's more so the people that are there. Like, that's more why I go to church. You know what I mean? To be around people like believers. You know what I mean? And I know everybody in there is dealing with something. But we all together, regardless of what it is that we're dealing with. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just love, I really appreciate everybody being like vulnerable and expressive tonight, because I've learned some great things, and I feel like this has been really fruitful, and I'm still an immature kid. So, Letitia, thank you for using the term treasure box. I just find that really amusing. Also,
Well, you might be 30 now.
I
Enjoy
can't grow up. I
Spotify
can't help
restrictions.
it. She said treasure box. I think it's really dope too that everyone here and maybe people watching and listening can recognize how consequential relationships are, and how the discernment we use in who we enter into relationship with, how we conduct ourselves in relationship, and the rules or the principles, the tenets that we put into place to guide us in relationship are super important, whether they're intimate relationships, friendships, mentee, mentor, all that type of stuff. And so I think, as the Bible says, iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel, to have some guys and some gals to talk and
Absolutely.
chat is really, really good. I feel like we're all a little more informed and educated as a result of it. It's been great.
I got one question for everybody. If you can give me your shortest version possible, but I have one question for everybody. Do you feel like if your mate doesn't go to church or isn't a Christian, do you feel like you can find yourself dating that person?
I knew you were going to ask that. I thought about this question right before we jumped on too. I knew you were going to ask this question.
No.
So Nikki, you say no?
No.
Melanie, you say no too?
Yes, no.
And Letitia, you say no as well?
So you asked two questions.
Huh?
Right? You asked doesn't go to church, and you also asked is not a Christian.
Yeah, well, I mean it as a whole, like just like, doesn't like participate in the whole godly aspect of things.
Okay.
They may believe in God, but just doesn't participate, if you will. So
because it's a very complicated question, right? And it's complicated because of where I sit, right? I've dated someone who doesn't go to church, but we'll go to church if I ask them to go to church with me, right? And we'll get some of the word, but we won't have a conversation later about the Lord and all the things after. Like, we won't do a sermon discussion after. That's what I would love to have, is to be with someone, ride in the car, go to lunch after church and brunch or whatever, and have a sermon discussion. I would love that moving forward. Yeah, exactly. But I have dated someone that way, so I can't just say no, absolutely out and out, like, no, I would never, because I've already done it. And then the other component of that, we're in the pandemic, sorry for my lights, we're in the pandemic, and going to church looks different now, right? And so that's why I wanted to clarify that question. So you might be, Ted Bundy, or not Ted Bundy, the other Bundy, Al Bundy. Sorry, not Ted Bundy. Don't be Ted Bundy. But Al Bundy, where you want to be home and you're introverted, and that's how you need to be here. We've set up a way now through the pandemic for people to get the word and everything through the TV. They don't going to get community is not everybody's. It is, right? But he said going to church. So I have to, me, I'm
also said a follower of Christ, a follower of God. A follower.
Right.
You can be a believer and not a follower.
Yes.
He's a
heathen. So that's the question.
He said, can you date a heathen?
That's not what he said, but
they just believe in God, but it's nonchalant about God.
I feel like it goes back to your original question about judgment, or your other discussion around judgment, and it becomes a little bit more complex and complicated. My desire would be to be with a follower, right? And that is, but if I pray over it and God says this is the person for you, right? There's a reason, right? And so I find it to be a little bit more
to ascend down from heaven and directly say,
melodies.
I think about that, and if I don't know for sure that God told me to marry that man who does not really participate in Jesus and church and all that other stuff, that's going to come up later, especially if we have kids. And I got to be concerned about what representation he is being for my children. And he don't go to church, so they looking at him like, well, he don't go to church, why we got to go to church? So different things. I also want him to be a spiritual covering over our house. I want us to be able to pray together. I want us to be able to have those discussions together. And if he does not do that, then that's a problem. Not saying that he can't start that way and end differently, but again, the Lord would have to tell me specifically.
Because Go ahead,
don't
Mike.
like just like I'm speaking from to myself as well. Don't be closed-minded about the assignment that you may have that could set your life free. What I mean by that is that if you meet somebody that you have chemistry with, it's not friction, it's real chemistry, it's compatibility, and they're on the fence about God, but you're not. You could very well be that vessel God has placed in that person's life to bring them to God.
Not as a dating
Can I
relationship.
raise my Zoom? Is it this my little
how
Zoom
can it
hand?
not?
Can I raise my Zoom?
Yeah.
Agree, Melinda.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
as not
Huh?
as a not as a person that I'm going to date and eventually marry. Like we could be
That's a whole nother conversation right there.
I can take you to church, you know what I mean? Introduce you to some great, men of God. Like I can do all those things, but I cannot consider you as someone that I'm going to like merge my life with because
But see,
that's potential.
it's
And
all about timing though. And the timing will merge together when the timing is right. So you met this
will it
person.
though?
It can. It's possible.
But
But
why should I hold out for just something that is potential? Because here's the thing, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
everything is potential based on potential though. We never know. It's all a gamble.
I don't date on potential.
No, I'm just
I
saying.
got it. I have
it's
dated
really
on
all a
potential. It didn't
gamble.
work. That's why we're here today.
What do you say? What you say?
I said I have dated on
comment.
potential. It didn't work. That's why we're here.
No,
today.
I'm not saying like if you really break it down, everybody is based on some potential. Like
Right,
if
we all
that
are
was
going
the
through
case,
greater
then
levels
we
in the
would
Lord.
just
Listen.
marry somebody and not expect them to grow. Like they
Yes,
would
but
just be
I'm
No,
gonna
and
tell
that's
you,
true.
you are right now, today, in this moment. You better,
Right.
you are today needs to be somebody I am comfortable spending the rest of my life with today, not in
Right.
the future. I want you to be better in the future, but you need to be a solid person right now.
Because
Hold on,
a good marriage counselor would say to you, if this person never changed ever, if who they are today is who they're going to be 50 years from now, are you okay with that? And if they're not a
I
Christian, they don't go to church. No, I'm not okay with that.
I get that. But do you guys really understand the true definition of being a vessel for somebody else?
Yes,
Yes.
but
Is
again,
that
But,
is
I-
that
but
the
being a vessel, there's two
Huh?
different things. Being a vessel
I don't
for the Lord
I've
does
seen it.
not
I've seen
mean, huh?
But it
I've
doesn't
seen it.
not mean that you're not supposed to do it either. Like it is.
Right. No, and
Yeah, I get that.
but-
You
but-
can use your judgment and like pass on, pass that up. But I think that everything doesn't just like people say everything that looks good isn't good. Everything that's bad that look bad ain't bad. I
and
mean,
it's
I
not
really
to say that
believe
that person is bad. Just
Right.
because you don't choose that person as, the person that you want to, marry or date, that doesn't mean that that person's bad. That doesn't mean that you're judging that person. Who you connect yourself with, like from a marriage perspective, is like the biggest decision that you'll make outside of choosing to follow Jesus. That's a huge decision. And I can't take it as lightly as like, oh, you know what, you may change. Maybe.
100%.
Because when you know yourself, just kind of like what Will was talking about earlier, when you take that time and you sit back and you get to know yourself, you get to know like the purpose that God has for you. Like I can only speak for me, but I know like I need somebody that's gonna run with me. Like we have souls to save before we go home to Jesus. And so if you need to be able to run with me. Like you need to be able to like, let's pray for these people. Let's pray for our family. Let's try to get better. Let's build generational, like, let's do all these things. And if I'm still trying to get you to go to church, I don't think it'll work.
I get
Gotta know
that.
yourself.
I get that 1,000%, 100%. However, Colin, I do really believe it's much deeper than that. I really do believe that. I really do believe that there is possibilities where we meet somebody and they're on the fence about God, but they're interested. And they never had anybody show them God the way you have. I've met so many people that are turned down by the church because of going to these old school Baptist traditional churches. Oh, put all your money out of your pocket and tithes and offerings and all that. And so they don't go anymore. So, but if you can be that person to show them different, it can't be like, oh, well, this could be my mate, so I can only show them this and then move away. Or I can only show this type of thing to my friends and my homegirls, my homeboys, my colleagues, or what have you. Like I've seen, like for an example, like I've seen people, a woman that was in love with God more than the man was, and the man turned into being a pastor. Like I've seen these stories happen. So I feel like we can't just limit ourselves to the possibility of what could be just because it's not 100% aligned. It's like taking time of dating and getting to know. If somebody check all the boxes off, trying to understand God, but asking you questions about God, I think it's worth the opportunity to listen and give them that person that. And be in that position and place to say, okay, this person could potentially be my husband because he's learning. He's trying to, understand the idea of Christianity or God or whatever your religion might be in this particular situation, and grow from there. Because he checks out all the other boxes, she checks out all the other boxes. It's like, why wouldn't you give that opportunity? Because you got a lot of people out here today checking no boxes.
Well, can I?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Melinda. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Oh, I was just going to say, I can do that. I'm all for leading people to Christ, but I don't have to do that in a dating relationship. I can lead you or show you who God is, treat you in the way that we're supposed to treat people as Christians, and then show you God-like interaction. And then in the future, if that turns into a relationship, that's something different. Until then, I'm be like, this is Craig, my brother in Christ.
Can I jump in here? That's funny. A lot of thoughts. I'm trying to distill them. I'm not gonna share all my thoughts, but I disagree with you, Mike, from a biblical standpoint, because I believe you guys were talking about covering, right? A man should be a priest in the home. No one, like, I hear what you're saying about, okay, maybe they pursue relationship, maybe they progress toward, right? And that's actually, that's kind of the story of redemption in the Bible, right? It's a progression, right? So oftentimes we have sins we struggle with. Oftentimes it doesn't just fall off. It's a progress toward sanctification. That's the word I was looking for. But the challenge is, and I think, Mike, you're asking women this question, and in a biblical context, oftentimes the man is supposed to be the priest of the home. If we're going in a direction, hopefully the man is leading in that direction. I agree with Melinda. I think it's a challenge to try to figure out and create a relationship in which we are establishing, where are we going? What is your purpose? What is my purpose? Is it aligned? And then also, oh, do you believe in Jesus? Whoa. That needs to be at the foundation, because if we're trying to pursue purpose and Jesus is not in that, we're going to have conflict in purpose pursuit. If we're trying to build family and Jesus is not in that, we're going to have a problem with family building, because I'm going to put it like this, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to throw it back to you. Your challenge with this question is a reflection of how high Jesus ranks on your priority list. If he's not that high, then you can slide Jesus in there and then have someone who kind of slides it in too. But if Jesus is a part of every decision you make and you're fully surrendered, you would have a really, really hard time trying to pull someone into that while also trying to continue walking in your own surrender. If you're trying to disciple someone into Christ, and then you're trying to walk into a biblical relationship in which both people are walking in surrender, you're trying to pull this person along from behind, somebody's going to get stressed out. Somebody's going to get frustrated. I think it creates a conflict. And it's not, I'm going to say this and I'm going to throw it back. It is not a husband or wife's sole job to be a vessel to lead you to Christ. You need to, because I've seen, you were using an anecdote, I've seen men try to pursue relationship with God because of that woman. And when it breaks off, he breaks off with God too. He was going after God because of that woman, not because he wanted a relationship.
Oh, I've definitely seen that too, for sure. But all I was trying to say was, I get what you're saying, but some of your parts I do disagree with, because everybody's walk with Christ or God is different, and everybody's been exposed to things differently. So if you have been exposed to certain things where you've gone to churches that were horrible, like Derek Daniels had preached a sermon I listened to just here, like I think it was yesterday, that talked about like the kingdom in church, and then like the
Was it?
human
Did you
aspect of
hear
it.
what I just said?
Well, he always says that.
He always
But
says that.
it was
But
just
yeah,
talking about.
he was talking
like,
about culture, kingdom, and the church's way, different levels
exactly.
of living.
And
Yeah,
sometimes the church's way is like the kingdom way, and sometimes it isn't. So
That's true.
depending on sometimes the church you go to, what you've been exposed to and seen can turn you off, right?
Yeah.
So because of those things,
But Mike, I don't live by the church. This right
I'm
here,
not-
I need this Bible. You can't see it. I need this Bible to teach me. I need the book. I
I
don't care what the
understand
church
that.
is telling me.
But Will, I get that. But your faith is much stronger than someone else's. Someone else's needs somebody to hold their hand for a little bit. Like I'm gonna tell you, every leader was once a follower.
Absolutely.
So to become
Absolutely.
a leader, you have to follow. But if
Absolutely.
you have no direction and nobody to follow, you can never become a leader. So in those positions where these people or these men understand God, but been like stirred away multiple times in multiple situations, they like, man, forget this. Now you come along and you're the one good thing that's straying them different. And it's like, I always had this in the back of my head. I knew God was this. I knew God was that. I knew he was this, and that. And now you're showing me this. I like you. You're a good person. You this. And it's like, okay, now I'm at this church. I'm at this situation. I'm at this Bible study. You want to pray all the time. You want to do this. I'm like, yo, this different. This is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been seeking. I haven't had this in my life. You know what I'm saying? So now you got them tapping into something they've always been searching and had no direction on how to find it. And you came in their life and showed them where to go, where to search, how to get it, and showed them a different, light or direction or something. And now they become the leader. Like I've seen that happen for people.
I can see that.
Like everybody, like some of us come from foundations where we were just raised in church. We just know God. We know this, blah, blah, blah. Some people come in church where like the church has shamed them. I've listened to sermons about the church shaming people. So how do we get those people back to the church? We can't say, oh, well, since, they're not as equally as yoked as us right now, then they can never be. And they can never be anything close to what we need them to be in our mate because they're not where we are right now. We want where we are right now before.
Right, but nobody's saying that they aren't ever going to get there, and because they're not there now, then they're not a quality person. I'm saying God needs to tell me specifically that this person is who he has for me, because God is not telling all of us to lead everybody to Christ. Some people don't want to come to Christ. You can't force people
I
to
agree.
Christ if they don't want to.
I agree.
So it doesn't have to be in the person I want to date has to lead that person. Why can't they get a spiritual mentor? They can get a Christian friend, a Christian mentor, or something like that. It doesn't have to be through a relationship. And we can be friends. And then once it gets to a point where I feel like God has said, yes, this person is your mate, or this person is in a position where they can be your mate, then that's something different. But if they were just walking in, everybody, that story you told about people being not a believer and then turning into a pastor, that's not everybody. And you don't know what the future is going to hold for that person. You don't know if they're actually going to grow in the word and grow in a relationship with God. So I'm not even going to go down that road of, like Will was saying, trying to drag somebody along if they're not even fully committed to knowing about God for themselves.
That concludes episode 3 of the mini series about relationship and dating. Please do me a favor. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. There's more to come.